Today, you're going to learn why most people never actually launch their apps so you can avoid the obstacles so many others face. Escaping this trap most people fall into is hard because the reality is most founders don't even realize it exists in the first place. But what we're going to cover today will help you move forward with your app quicker than ever before and more strategically than ever. I'm Kristen Young's co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps, where we help CEOs and founders build custom software to start or scale their businesses. Let's dive right in. So why do most people never launch their apps? And even worse, why do most people never even start building their apps in the first place? Is it because they don't have the right background? Maybe they're not technically savvy enough? Is it because they didn't find the right co-founder and they simply couldn't execute on their own? I mean, sure, a lot of people might feel like these external factors might be holding them back. But in reality, those factors are usually only a symptom of the real root cause, the actual reason most people never build their apps. It has to do with how you make decisions. Peter Drucker said, "Whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision." And our own business coach often says, "Anxiety lives in the space between alternatives." Both messages are critical for anyone building a business around their apps. They focus on something a lot of people overlook. See, most people in the startup or business world think about things like tech skills, co-founders, seed funding, and more as the causes of success or failure. Few realize that success and failure can generally be predicted well before delving into any of those specific areas, though. In reality, the root cause of someone's success or failure hinges on only one thing: their ability to make decisions. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Here's the thing. Most people look at decision-making in a black and white way. In other words, they think making a decision will only produce one of two results: right or wrong. And when you look at decision-making in that way, choosing any one specific option will either have good or bad consequences. Maybe you're trying to build a sign-up or login page, for example, but you can't decide whether the flow or design looks good, so you spend the next week or two tweaking and changing it, and even then you're still not sure. In that scenario, the decision of how to design the page will theoretically bring either a good or a bad result, and that means if it's not perfect the first time around, you've failed. Or maybe you're trying to choose which plugin or third-party service to use for your app, and you're not sure which one to pick. In that scenario, the decision of which integration to use will theoretically dictate the outcome of that entire feature. And because that feature might be vital to your app, you can't make the wrong decision now in case it comes back to bite you later on, right? What most people don't realize is that, in reality, decisions don't have to bring right or wrong outcomes. Instead, they can serve as a critical gateway into feedback loops with your app. Here's what I mean. Creating a sign-up and login page doesn't have to be a black or white decision. The design you choose doesn't have to be right or wrong. In reality, it'll simply be a starting point. And a starting point is always good. Likewise, choosing an integration for a feature doesn't have to be one or the other, so to speak. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. In reality, it's just another starting point. And those starting points are critical to your app's overall success, because without them, you have nothing. The reality of decision making is nothing is set in stone, and no decision has to be a bad one. A decision is simply a starting point. And sure, after you get started, you might realize you need to go in alternate directions at times, but at least you're moving in some direction versus sitting at a complete standstill because you're paralyzed by the what ifs. What if you make a decision you have to change later on? What if you do something that doesn't work like you want it to? What if you realize another integration would have been better now that you've started using the one you went with? Well, in each of those cases, you go where the feedback leads you. You follow the path your testing and data is telling you to take. You adapt. And through all of that, you have to understand two important things. The first is adapting, pivoting, or changing paths isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, that's the only way to successfully grow and manage a business, by trying things out, by testing and adapting where needed, by realizing that the decisions you make aren't good or bad. They're simply starting points. And the second thing is, without those starting points, you'll have nothing. And a starting point that leads you down a path of adaptation and change is vastly better than no starting point at all. If you can live by those two foundational rules, you can start seeing real progress with your app. And even more so, you can use your decision-making ability as a competitive advantage. See, it's well known among successful CEOs and executives that being able to make quick decisions gives them an edge over their potential competitors in their markets. Why? Because decision makers move quickly, plain and simple. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with them making the right decisions. It simply has to do with them making decisions in the first place and enabling themselves to move forward faster than most other people. We recently had a client in our MVP program come into the group with a plan for his app that he'd been piecing together for years. He was stuck in his career, and having his own app was the only way he'd be able to evolve and expand in the way he wanted. And when he first started with us, we were expecting massive steps forward right from the very first couple of days because he was so enthusiastic about it. Instead, though, as the first week went by, every time we had our check-ins with him, he was still working on the same thing, deciding which features to include in his first version. Now, the thing was, he had already planned out which features to build first. He had them outlined in his development roadmap from day one. The only thing left for him to do was start executing. But he honestly felt paralyzed because he was afraid that even though he had a plan, it wouldn't be the right one. So we had a long discussion with him about decision making and how the outcome of a decision isn't right or wrong. An outcome is simply data that's been gathered through research. Now, sometimes that data tells you to go in one direction, and sometimes it tells you to go in another. But until you have the data in the first place, you'll never know what next steps to take. You might be feeling like he was. You might be so worried you'll make the wrong decision that you can't even bring yourself to start building your app in the first place. In that client situation, as soon as he finally decided to take his first step and simply follow the roadmap he'd created, it was like a starting gun went off at a race and he was sprinting by, lapping all the competitors. All he needed was an understanding that a decision doesn't have to be wrong. It just has to be a decision in the first place. And maybe that's all you need too, whether you've already started development or not. And if you're feeling stuck or sluggish with your progress, know that a single decision can reveal an endless path of next steps for you. It might feel hard to make it at first, but as soon as you do, the next decision and the next will all become clearer and easier to make because each one will bring you more feedback and data to work from. So make a decision, whatever it is, and start using that research to help you become even more decisive in your next steps. It's one of the key roadblocks holding people back from ever building or launching their apps, but it doesn't have to be for you. All right, I hope that helped you learn a helpful new strategy for your app. With the steps we went over, you should be able to bypass this dangerous trap and move forward with your app faster and more strategically. If you learned something new today, go ahead and click the subscribe button right below this video so you can stay updated on every new video released. And if you want to take this way further, head to coachingnocodeapps.com and sign up for our extended training series. It's completely free. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.